Hey team, welcome back to another episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I'm on here with Garrett from Aqua Yield, and I'm excited to dive in and see what he's got to share with us. So, Garrett, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Cool, man. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
Um, that's a great question, and I thought about it quite a bit. And listening to the podcast, I've been thinking about it, and it's doing something with purpose. To me,
Mm,
it's calculated, well thought out. Um, having purpose and having drive behind your decisions and behind your actions, despite whatever kind of challenge arises, whatever kind of curveball comes your way. Being able to take that and still have the end goal in mind and
mhm.
how to attain that.
Yeah, I like it. And I'm forgetting now that the people we're now interviewing, now that the podcast has been out for a couple of months, have the advantage on those that were in the first 30 or 60 episodes before that we recorded before we launched it.
Do your homework and take advantage when you
Right?
can.
Hey, take advantage of what everybody. So far, nobody has nailed my definition, which I haven't actually publicly unveiled as of this recording. Maybe by the time people listen to this, it'll be out. But I have not publicly unveiled what that is. And but people are starting to get closer. We're starting to hone in, and purpose is a big part of it. Like I mean, just really getting up and knowing what you're about today,
Yeah, absolutely.
and then aligning your
Um,
actions with it.
yeah, and having just a mission and
Mhm.
deliberately carrying out objectives to attain that mission.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool. Well, then give us a little background on you, your business, what you're up to these days, so we can get to know you just a little bit.
Yeah, so my background as far as agriculture and career is concerned, I grew up on a farm, and my family, my dad had an independent fertilizer company, bulk fertilizer company. So I grew up
Mhm.
when I was young, pushing brooms, loading carts, loading liquid fertilizer. Then moved up to a chemical applicator, um, rode around in floaters, spray rigs for many years,
Mhm.
and then became a consultant. So got in the agronomy side. The science, the chemistry really took a hold of me. So I pursued a degree in chemistry and
Mhm.
applied physics, and then was still a crop advisor after that. Then I worked in an analytical lab where I was a method development chemist and an analytical chemist and a little bit of a formulation. And then by happenstance and just a great timing, I met up with Aqua Yield. At the time, it was Aqua Yield. Now we've changed the brand to Nano Yield, all encompassing of our work. And then got back in agriculture, and it's all of my passions combined into one. So it's
Mhm.
really just a fantastic situation that I find myself in.
Very cool. So talk to us a little bit about Nano Yield then, and what's the technology that you guys are promoting?
Yeah, so what we're doing is we are creating nanoparticles, and what we do is we get them to the right concentration, right size, the right material, and then we incorporate them in crop chemistries, whether that be any kind of pesticide or liquid fertilizer, liquid nutrients, and then what we do is we just develop another route of plant uptake.
Mhm.
We have the typical routes through diffusion, active transport, things of that nature, and we just create another route of uptake and increase efficiency in that way.
Cool. Cool. I like it. There's so many different technologies out here in the space today. I'm curious, as you guys try to bring this to market, what are some of those challenges that you're facing in trying to get adoption of your product? Are you distributing through retail or are you going direct to the farm? What's the
Yeah, we're going the retail. The model of the business model is dealer retailer, and then getting the agronomists involved so they can relay the message. The biggest hurdle we've had is since it's a new technology in agriculture. It's not a new technology in science as a whole. I mean,
right,
this
right.
kind of this kind of delivery system has been around for a long time. all of our electronics, our um, medicines, they all exploit these characteristics. So the hardest thing has been to take this very technical, science-based technology and talk about it in an agricultural sense, because yeah, we know a cell phone is very, very high tech. Laptop is very, very high tech. Cancer treating drugs,
Mm-hmm.
and now we're talking about getting glyphosate into invasive weeds. And to cross that bridge, it's a lot of times where I've been talking in front of growers, in front of an agronomist, they're like, "Well, it sounds too good to be true. What can it not do?" And
Yeah.
we don't want to bring it like that, but being able to bridge that gap and explain a new technology has been
Mm-hmm.
difficult.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
once they grab onto it, then it's easy. Then it's
Right.
it's
Yep.
easy for them.
I totally understand. I face the same challenge in my business, in our business, which if you've never been through one of our trainings, right, you would lump our work in with all other training, right? So you've been to a
Right.
training and you sit there and you listen to some guy talk at a lectern with a PowerPoint and a 3-ring binder that they stayed up all night printing and binding for you, and the brains turn off
Right.
because all the information is already in the binder. You don't actually have to listen, right? That's how
Yeah,
most training gets done, and nothing against it. It's a way to convey information, right?
it
Just
is.
like our traditional conventional farming methods are a way to farm, and it seems to work. It gets the job done for the most part, right?
Yeah.
And you're introducing a new way, which and that's our method too. So we create an experience that actually inspires our participants to want to learn,
Right.
right? So we're increasing the uptake. It's a different
Yes.
channel. So I'm like, it's the same thing that we're doing. It's just that we're doing it with ideas and inspiration and clarity, and you guys are doing with nanotech
Yeah. Yeah.
and plants.
One of the first times when I was working here at Nano Yield and I was in front of a crowd, um, I was alongside my boss. We were presenting, and he said, "The first time you bring up quantum mechanics, I'm going to hit you in the back of the leg. We can't get lost in the technology." So that was my
Yeah.
first experience on how to present.
Right, right. Yeah, that the quantum mechanics is tough for anybody to pick up, let alone
Yeah,
try to
it
explain
is.
in a sales conversation. So
Yeah, don't bring it
good.
up.
Yeah. Well, let's get on with the interview as far as talking about some of the things around building team and things like that. So talk to us a little bit about your approach on talent attraction, retention. What anything in particular that's working for you?
Yeah, there was something that was conveyed to me when I was young, and that was, if you have ownership, or you take ownership, or you're giving some sort of a possession of a
Mm-hmm.
process, of a company, of whatever the case may be, you will take pride in it. Inherently, you're going to take pride in it.
Mm-hmm.
And if you give that pride to someone, and the best way to do that is to give them ownership in what they're doing. So the talent that we have,
Yep.
all ideas are listened to.
Cool.
Everyone has a purpose in the place of work. When we go in the lab, um, you know there's a distinct ownership where people take pride in it. If they take pride in it and they can see the results and they get the feedback, and whether it's negative or positive or constructive, they're going to build
Mm-hmm.
that sense of pride and that sense of ownership. And I think
Yeah.
that's been a key, at least for me. And I try to pass that on to my team.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that. I like that. And so let's play devil's advocate because we talk about creating these cultures within which all ideas are warranted. And I
Yeah.
certainly I want if you got a good idea that's going to help us acquire customers or serve our current customers better or help a client make progress or whatever, I'm all in. I'm all ears. Not all of them are good ideas.
Right.
So, and just based on 20 years of doing this, I might have an idea of to some extent what might work. Maybe it's a novel idea. I'm like, shoot, let's try it. And at the same rate, you're like, no, this is a waste of time. Like, I mean, we've been down
Right.
this road, done this before, right? I've tried that and failed at it. Let's not put our money and time into that. So how do you address that?
um with respect, always have respect,
Mm-hmm.
talk through it, and come to the conclusion together that this may not be a good idea. It's happened to me. I've had that
Mm-hmm.
where step by step, go through the process. What is the end goal? And does this new idea reach that goal? And does it
Yeah.
reach it in a sustainable way? And
Mm.
then if you can get there and showing respect to it, it tends to go over better than saying, that's a dumb idea. Go back to your office and think about it some more. That's
Yeah.
not very constructive.
Right, right. Well, so the idea is we want people to we want to honor all ideas. We have a policy in our classrooms when we're doing training, right? That if it gets brought up, we have to honor what the student is saying, what the participant is saying. So we even if it's a completely off topic, right? And when we're talking about sales management, right? And they bring up something that's completely left field about glyphosate uptake,
Yeah.
right? We might say something like, so tell me more about, okay, so I hear where you're going with that. Tell me more about how that applies to the sales management, right?
Right.
They'll usually sort of talk themselves down and say, okay, maybe that's a conversation for right after hours. We talk about that later. I'm like, cool. Hey, write that down. Make sure we don't forget about it. Bring it back up later. Right. And then often they don't, or maybe we do, right. And it's more applicable to another conversation later on. But it's, it is really important to create that culture within which people can have some good ideas. I share something with you that just so I go through a coaching program as well, and our coaches have shared this with us. We've adopted this into our culture. This is now a standard at all of our team meetings. I think the people on the podcast will get a lot out of this. So there's a it's designed like a kitchen. Okay. And so if it's on the stove, so whenever he shows up to our team meetings, weekly or sometimes multiple times per week, they're required to show up with what's on the stove, what's on your stove this week. Okay. So right now we're in the heat of event production season. We've got all the event stuff, ordering shirts, making sure things are in the right, everything, making sure everything is shipped, making sure the clients are showing up, everything has been
Right.
communicated. It's all the stuff that goes along with event production, right?
Uh-huh.
That's on the stove, right? And there's a couple other things that can be on the stove, but I've only got 4 burners on my stove. I don't know what you got in your house, Garrett, but there's only 4. So you can only have so many things on the stove. And then
Right.
you can have some things in the fridge. So what's in your refrigerator? It's in the fridge. It's not cooking yet, right? It's ready. It's thawed out. It's or it's thawing out and it's getting ready to go on the stove, but it's not quite there today. So this is maybe it's a week or 2 out,
Right.
right?
Yep.
And then we've got some things that are in the freezer. So if it's in the freezer, and this is a great way to honor some of those bad ideas, or
Right.
maybe a
Yes.
good idea that's not important today, right? It's relevant, but it's not urgent to what's on the stove today. And so we take those those new ideas, and I need to do this too because I have a lot of new ideas every day. And so what we do is we put those ideas in the freezer, write them down, right? And you put it in the freezer, and you can keep a growing list of all the things that are in your freezer. And what happens over time is sometimes things just don't come out of the freezer. Every once in a while, you got to go back and clean out the freezer. You're like, I don't know what the heck I was thinking.
Right. Yeah.
I'm sure
Yeah.
glad I left that in the freezer, right?
Leave it
So
in there and freezer burn, and there's no need to bring it back out and try to cook with it. And
yeah,
we do the same thing here as well.
yeah,
So we have a digital whiteboard that we have.
cool.
And anyone that has an idea, and it's open to the R&D and the agronomy team, and write down an idea, and if it's a problem that we need to address, it gets moved up high priority, and then we call it the parking lot. Parking lot is where things go, but it was a good idea, let's let it marinate, see if something
Mm-hmm.
comes of it, and then we have in queue, and we just work through that process to where every idea is acknowledged. And if it has drive behind it, and if it has a need, because again, in this innovation space, are you creating things just for the sake of creating them, or are you addressing a problem? And that's one of the big questions that we try to really press here. Are you just making things to make things, or is there a purpose? Is there a reason that you're putting the time and effort into a project?
Yeah, yeah, you bet. Good stuff, man. Love it. And having a system like that is a great way to for people to be able to bring up new ideas. We can honor them. We don't always get to execute on all of them, but at least we can make people feel heard. That feels
Right.
really intentional. And some of those things, by the way, turn into really great ideas that make us a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely. And
You know?
there we can incorporate them and turn them into hybrid ideas too.
Uh-huh.
It's just a well-rounded way of thinking.
Mm-hmm. Yep, absolutely. Cool. Well, so just curious for you, what's been one of those big hurdles that you've had to overcome in the course of your career, Garrett?
Um, having pushback, generally just having pushback, and it may have been something that I delivered in a non-constructive way, and
Mm-hmm.
then having pushback, and then having to reestablish that kind of culture. I think that's been something hard, and that was even way back when I was consulting, or when I was
Mm-hmm.
running my dad's fertilizer plant.
Sure.
Um, there's a right way to confront an issue, and there's there's
Yeah.
good and there's the bad,
Yeah.
and having to learn that, how to address those issues,
Mm-hmm.
that's been something that I've had to learn, and I'm still learning that all the time. Being conscious of it and being cognizant of that delivery has been something that, I'll probably continue to work on, and hopefully I one day I perfect it. Doubt
Yeah.
it, but I can still try.
You bet. You bet. Well, that's anytime you're getting pushback on ideas or thoughts, I mean, it's relevant to the conversation we just had about having ideas,
Yeah.
and not all of them are good. Sometimes they're, people are not going to want to adopt. And that's part of the name of the game, right? It's just
Right.
working through, turning over stones, trying to find those people that do agree, that do get what you're selling, that are picking up
Right.
what you're laying down, so to speak, right? But
Yeah.
it's the big challenge. Most people quit before they
Yeah.
get. Yeah.
Absolutely. They see it as a static environment, where it's really a dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Everything's changing, and to be able to, if you want to stay in this static step by step stage gate, where yes, that has to there's a place and time for that,
Mm-hmm.
but if that ability to change and be dynamic, that's hard, and that's it's a hard thing to learn.
Yeah. Who has been somebody that helped you through those times of your career where it was tough?
Um, well, I'll always go back when I was working for the old man.
Yeah.
Um, he had mixed ways of explaining things to me. Hard and some were good.
Yeah.
Um, and then there were guys that I work with in my previous positions, and then as of now, just having conversations with them, and
Mm-hmm.
getting their perspective. There's a thing that my wife and I always talk about, and it's perspective.
Mm-hmm.
Just take yourself out of this tunnel vision view of the situation you're currently in. Put yourself in third person and the opposite person, and just get perspective.
Mm-hmm.
That has been something that's really helped me through those hurdles. Just take 10 seconds, take a breath,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah.
think about it in a different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And I use that daily. I try to incorporate that in my daily thinking. Just give grace.
Yeah.
Uh, Also, that comes with being a leader. And then there's time to where you have to address things more in a stern fashion, but
Mm-hmm.
just again use perspective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, grace is, it operates separately, right? From
Yes.
accountability in a way, right? I mean, we can have I can see where you're at, and you know what? At this point in the career, this is just not the right spot. And
Yep.
however we got there, maybe somebody else put that person in that role. Maybe we hired poorly, didn't ask the right questions. We weren't diligent enough. Maybe some of that's our fault. Maybe maybe they pulled the wool over our eyes and they, claim to be someone they're not. And we bought into it. There's
Absolutely.
a lot of things. And I can forgive that person for that.
Right.
I forgive myself. Right. This is what grace means. Like we get forgiveness, even if we don't deserve it.
Yeah.
And that's an important thing to consider. And we still have to we have to generate results in the role. And so sometimes I'm in the wrong role. I've been there.
Yeah, absolutely. The wrong role, wrong time. Um,
Mm-hmm.
is there a way that we can take that person and incorporate them into a different
Sure.
position where they're going
Mm-hmm.
to thrive? Because right now, where they're at, they're not. You know, maybe like you said, it was just pulled the wool over our eyes, or the position changed. That happens as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Being able to give yourself grace and then say, hey, how do we resolve this, and
You bet.
being respectful to them, and,
Mhm.
and and the company, because essentially at the end of the day, somewhere we've got to fix that, we've got to remedy that.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Well, talk to me a little bit about what comes up for you as one of the biggest wins that you've had. So we talked about challenges, and we've talked about who's helped you along. What's been one of your biggest challenges to overcome? Or excuse me,
um,
what's been one of your biggest wins in overcoming these
right.
challenges? Excuse me, got to get my questions straight here.
So thought we're going back. It's been when I what I consider a win is being able to inspire the guys that are working for me, guys and girls, um,
Mm-hmm.
giving them a sense of pride in something.
Mm-hmm.
I when going back, and doesn't matter what the where I was working or the position I was in, inspiring someone and giving them that sense of pride, I consider that a win, because I've portrayed something to them that's important, and then they internalize it as important as well, and they get passionate about it.
Yeah.
I like that passion, and I like that drive. I think if you have those traits in your employees, it makes the workplace environment better. It makes your results better. It makes thinking. I just think it's a great thing to have, and I consider that a win when I have those outcomes with the people that I work with.
Cool. I love it. Good. It's still fun. It's just fun to see people succeed. I love it when there's somebody who can now step into the role that at one point only I could do that thing.
Yeah,
And you see
right.
someone else do it, and it's like I get more joy out of that than actually doing it these days.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I see it. I see it all the time, and I do take a lot of joy in that.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Well, I want to kind of bring it in with a speed round on these three things, which is how do you keep your energy up? How do you stay productive? What are your pro tips for that? And then what's one big thing you got to improve this year? So, what's your protocol for keeping your energy high?
Oh, I try to eat as good as I can, and I focus on my sleep. Always focus on
Nice.
getting enough sleep, um, and then of course working out when I can with the time.
Mhm.
I always like to do that, and I feel a lot better, just
Cool.
physically and mentally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's one of those things, and when we encourage our clients to make that a priority,
Yeah.
we say, hey, you got to be a little selfish in order to be selfless, because otherwise
Yes.
you keep pouring from an empty cup, man. So
Right. You have
yeah,
nothing to give.
for sure, absolutely. Cool. What about just staying productive and keeping your team productive?
So we actually do a lot of things, and I've picked these up over the course of my different careers. We always have a weekly touch base with my R&D team, where we come
Mm-hmm.
in, we put down our accomplishments we had from last week, what we're doing this week, and the help needed. That way, if there's something that comes up, we know that we may be asked or called upon to help on this project.
Mm-hmm.
Then, on top of that, we have a daily check in where it takes 10 seconds. Get there in the morning. You know what you're working on, because if you've had your week planned out.
Mm-hmm.
10-second on a team chat. This is just one word, and that way everyone stays organized and kind of knows what's going and staying motivated. Because if you're being transparent with your colleagues, it adds more accountability to each person.
Yep. Yep. Do you guys use any certain technologies for communication other than email and text, like Slack or anything?
No, we everything that we do is all on Google, so it's very
Sure.
easy, and
Mhm.
it's yeah, the accessibility is important, so everyone pretty well is always accessible all the time.
Yeah. We do the same thing in terms of we use Google Drive to store everything. We can, get in and access proposals and make notes on documents and things
Yep.
together. That's cool. We don't chat through Google or anything like that. We use Slack,
Okay.
which I like just because it's highly searchable and we can create a separate thread for each one of our key accounts and projects and events and things that we're working on. So we keep the conversations segmented and it keeps it out of email.
Yeah, right. And
Which
keeps
is
them more siloed. Yeah, that's a
yeah,
great that's a great
which I
idea.
like. I don't know if I'm sure every organization, every team or team leader's got to figure out what works for them and theirs. But
Yep.
that's why I ask. I was curious what different people are doing to keep that, because
Yeah.
obviously we know that email's not working.
No, no. We
Email is for attachments, just so everybody's aware. That is the only thing. It's like what I send big packages on FedEx, right? I mean, like if I'm going to send you a book, I'm going to FedEx it to you. If I'm going to send you a
right.
package, I'm probably going to FedEx it to you. Okay, email's the same way. If I have a big PDF, I'm going to email it to you.
Email it.
Otherwise,
Right.
or if they're outside the company, oh, fine, okay, email. But internal stuff, the people are so. This is one of the biggest challenges that we work with our clients to overcome. They're so overwhelmed by their heavy laden email inboxes, and they feel buried. I have
Yeah.
clients that are getting 300, 400, 500 emails a day.
Yeah.
Right.
And yeah, and on that too, the massive amount of emails, I try to tell, and I've got to do better with this myself. Allocate an hour in the morning and an hour in the afternoon to answer emails. If there's something that pressing, you will get the information. Otherwise, you would be replying to emails all day, and then the productivity is garbage.
Mm-hmm.
So it's I've got, and again, I want to work on this too, but um, being able to allocate that time, because again, you could be doing emails all night long.
Mm-hmm.
It's not good for your balance. It's not good for your productivity. It's just not good. No
Yeah.
emails.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And I even, I try to do the courtesy now if I'm sending even like a prospect email or just following up with a client and it's 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, because maybe I'm on an airplane, I'm on my way home and I've got time to hammer some stuff out, or, maybe it's just one of those nights that kids are busy doing stuff and I'm just sitting there, in the truck waiting to pick up from volleyball or whatever. And I'm just
Right. Yeah.
a couple of emails, and I've been thinking about last night was literally 9 o'clock at night picking up, from volleyball practice. And anyway, like there's the handy little schedule feature, at least on
Yeah.
Gmail. I assume it's there for Outlook. And I can just tap, okay, you know what? Send this, whatever. Send this tomorrow at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Don't, don't ping this person now. It's like 11, 9 o'clock at night, 10 o'clock at night, and nobody wants that.
Yeah.
And we want to communicate that it's good to have that, a little bit of separation. If it's not urgent,
Yeah. If it's not urgent, otherwise, yeah. Like to your point, you would be once you start with one email, then
yeah,
it's the second one, and then
yeah,
there's a third one, and then so
right.
it's that can suck a lot of time out of your personal life, which
Yeah.
is
Well, and it doesn't seem like much in that moment, right? It's just
right.
two, but that's a drip, drip, drip that turns into a bathtub full, a house full of water. And I mean, not to get dark, right? But it leads to a lot of divorces and stuff like this too, right? I mean,
Yeah.
because people just stop paying attention. It's just like a little bit, a little bit, a little bit. And then all of a sudden it's like, well, I got all these big problems, either in
Yep.
my business or people are quitting, or I've got, challenges going on at home. And, but there are still, and the reason we need this podcast, Garrett, is because there are still jackasses out there who are talking like we still like they expect a reply if I send an email at 9:55, like
Yeah.
they expect you to get back to them that night.
Yeah.
I'm
Oh yeah.
sorry, like
Absolutely.
unless we've agreed that that's the case for a particular moment in time, that's not going to fly in today's world.
No. No. And it should not be expected. It's that's an encroachment of someone's personal time, and unless it's in dire needs, there are, of course, are circumstances that call for that. But I mean,
Yeah. hey, there are certain times of the year where you maybe are committed, right, to make delivering for customers in the spring or the fall in agronomy.
Yeah,
I get that. That's, but there's a start, there's a sunrise and a sunset to that season,
yep,
right? Sometimes the
yeah,
sunset takes a little while, but there's generally a sunset, and it's not as for 3, 4, 5, 6, 10 weeks. Sometimes it can be super intense, but then it kind of calms down a little bit. And
yeah,
we're always busy, and I'm really speaking to the day to day of, like, the admin work, the busy work, the stuff that we're always doing. Just because
right,
it's a priority for you now does not mean it's a priority for me right now, unless we've had a conversation and agreed that this is something that's got to be addressed today,
yeah,
right?
yeah. And there's yes, I'm glad you brought that up because when I was an agronomist and I was moving material, yeah, in March and April, I would get calls at 11:30 in the night because a truck was broke down that had 24-ton of fertilizer that had to be spread the next day. Those circumstances, and that's where obviously you can draw the line and say, yes, this needs to be taken care of. We need to
Mm-hmm.
get to work on this.
Yep.
Um, and I think that's very unique to our industry as well. There's going to be some of those circumstances. Hey, I run out of dicamba. Can you run me out 20 gallons just so I can get finished?
Yep.
And I think that service, it, that speaks volumes. But being
Mm-hmm.
able to differentiate between unnecessary email at 9:30 and someone's livelihood depending on
Yep.
what the delivery of our goods and services. I think that's very important to have
Mm-hmm.
have that in mind.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. And there's a little something called a collecting credit conversation that you get to have with that customer later on. So
Sorry, Mark, that got
yeah,
cut out.
yeah, it froze just a second. So, but there's also something called the collecting credit conversation
Yes.
that we train people to have with their customers later on, to just assess the service level and, like, hey, what was that meaningful to you? To what level? What can we do to avoid those kind of things next time? So, hey, let's plan for 20% more, right?
Yeah.
You can always return 10%, like a little bit of it if you got it left over, right?
Yep. Yep.
As long as it's not a product, a biological that's going to die,
Yeah.
you
Right.
know,
Right.
or something like that. But anyway, well, so let's so much we could probably just do a whole episode on training customers how to treat you and training other people how to treat you as well. But what's one big thing for you this year, Garrett, that you're working to improve on?
Um, I'm. This is going to go back to what I alluded to earlier is perspective. That's get myself out of that silo of my tunnel vision of my own what I'm thinking and give myself different perspective and also be able to change in a dynamic situation. I bring that up
Mm,
and that's something to where yeah, I've laid out. So what I do typically is at night before I go home to work or go
mm-hmm.
home from work, I'll look at my next day and I'll prioritize what I need to get done. 98% of the time, it doesn't go as
Right,
planned.
right.
I have an outline pretty much, but everything is changing. Got to put out fires, and this goes from everyone in agriculture. There's a
Mm-hmm.
fire that arises that you got to address, and then you're here, then you're here, then you got to change your way of thinking for this task. Um, so being able to be more dynamic is what I'm really trying to work
Yeah.
on, and not get fixated, not get frustrated. And
Mm-hmm.
it takes practice, especially if you have deadlines. So
Yeah,
just being able
absolutely.
to roll that and allocate time and
Yeah.
being able to have that dynamic mindset.
Mm-hmm. I like it. By the way, so are you open to a pro tip on how to develop that?
Always.
So this is going to seem totally left field, but roll with me, okay? Because what
Got
you're
it.
really talking about when we talk about being able to approach to be more dynamic in the moment, generally what we're talking about is like, hey, I don't want to be so stressed out when things aren't going according to plan. I want to be able to read the field, see the field, make better decisions, and get through the day feeling better, right? And having better outcomes over time. Okay, but it boils down to basically managing stress level, which is directly tied to our personal capacity, our physical, mental, and emotional capacity
Yeah.
to do the
Right.
job. So that's the context, the setup, or and then the context is the setup to say this, and this is why it's going to seem like left field. I recommend either CrossFit or boxing. Okay.
Okay.
And like getting into even just getting into a kickboxing gym, you don't have to take punches. Better if you do, but the more you get into those situations where you're stressing your body and having to remember how to do things and be able to like whatever, do a pull up until fail, right? Or
Yeah.
have to push through and meet something by a certain amount of time. It forces you to be dynamic because it gets really hard for that 20 minutes while you're doing the workout of the day.
Yeah. Absolutely.
One thing I want to try this year to add on to that is do you like guns?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, me too. I'm terrible with my handgun though, so I want to get better with it. And I want to so this came recommended to me by one of my Muay Thai boxing instructors, and it's a close quarter combat. So you can actually
Interesting.
go to like a there's a lot of like shooting the what do they call it? Like like a club, right, or something like this. They're all over the country in different places where they will take you through a simulated close quarter combat where you have to go through and clear rooms inside of a building, right? And there's all these distractions that will just really mess with your mind, and it's such
Yeah.
a it's an amplified version of going through our day to day because you talk about having to shift perspective and be able to like maintain dynamic composure while you're
Yeah.
in there, right? And you're trying to like clear a house, take out a target, and then somebody's like beating you over the head with a like a rubber stick or something to kind of distract you. And there's all these different distractions. It's pretty wild. So that's something I want to add on this year as well.
Yeah. That's and it's funny you bring that up, the whole boxing thing, because I have done that in the past,
Mm-hmm.
and to tie that into the stress levels, like just as you're talking about, famous quote from Mike Tyson: "Everyone has a plan until they get punched in the nose,"
Every
and
day.
isn't that the truth? That is the damn
So true.
truth.
So true. Cool, man. Well, hey, this has been a great conversation, Garrett. Thanks for being on the show, man.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Mm-hmm.